Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to another literary journey through time. Today, I'll share with you a story that was born in arid lands, but blossomed like an oasis of hope and love. A narrative that teaches us that the greatest walls can be torn down by the simplest gestures, that the language of the heart transcends all barriers, and that true love builds bridges where others see only chasms. Before we begin our journey to the past, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? What part of the world is being touched by this story today? And don't forget, if this narrative touches your hearts, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories that feed the soul. Year 1871. Location: arid north of Tucson, Arizona Territory, United States. The Arizona sun burned like incandescent metal over the parched earth when Samuel Garrett spotted the motionless figure by the small arroyo. The wind carried the bitter aroma of sage and the sweet perfume of blooming cacti, creating an olfactory symphony that cradled the endless days of that summer of 1871. Sam dismounted from his horse with the caution of a man who had learned to read the signs of the desert. His eyes, blue as winter sky, found a young Apache woman unconscious, her traditional garments stained with dried blood. His heart hesitated, not from fear but from awareness of the weight of that moment. Sarah and Benjamin, his children, waited for him in the wooden cabin he had built with his own hands after losing his wife in childbirth with the youngest. The child who hadn't survived had left a silence in the house that echoed louder than any scream. Now, facing that wounded woman, Sam felt destiny whispering in his direction. With infinite care, he lifted her in his arms. She was light as a feather, but there was a dignity in her posture, even unconscious, that touched something deep in Sam's soul. The blood on her back revealed a bullet wound, not fatal, but serious enough to have brought her down. During the journey back, her head rested against his chest, and Sam noticed that her black hair smelled of wild herbs and distant rain. There was something in that moment that transcended the simple act of rescue, as if the universe had conspired for those two worlds to meet exactly there, exactly at that hour. The cabin emerged on the horizon like a beacon of hope. Sarah ran to them, her brown eyes wide with curiosity and concern. Benjamin followed more cautiously, but equally intrigued. Sam knew that the decision he had made in that instant would change their lives forever. When he laid the young Apache woman in the bed that had once been his wife's, Sam whispered a silent prayer. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story, but something in his heart told him that this encounter was no coincidence. It was the first verse of a song that was just beginning to be written. What Sam didn't imagine was that by saving that life, he was about to discover that some souls were born to find each other, even when separated by entire worlds. When Ayanna awakened, her black eyes opened like two starry nights. For an instant, terror dominated her. She didn't recognize the wooden ceiling, nor the aroma of coffee that hung in the air. But when she tried to sit up and felt pain throbbing in her back, memory returned like a wave. The peace negotiation, the shots, the desperate flight. Sam was sitting in a nearby chair, his large hands resting on his knees. When he noticed she had awakened, he made a slow and deliberate gesture. He stepped back a few paces and lowered his palms, in a universal language of peace. Ayanna understood immediately. She was not a prisoner. Sarah appeared in the doorway, carrying a bowl of warm water. Her steps were soft as a deer's, and there was a sweetness in her eyes that made Ayanna relax. The girl approached slowly, offering the water with a shy smile. When Ayanna drank, she tasted kindness in every sip. Benjamin watched from the doorway, curious but respectful. In his hands, he held small twigs he had collected in the yard. With careful gestures, he began to draw in the dry earth of the floor. First a sun, then a house, then human figures, a man, two children, and finally, a woman. Ayanna understood the message and smiled for the first time since awakening. With her index finger, she drew her own story on the ground: distant mountains, a group of people, and then a female figure separated from the others, surrounded by symbols representing care and protection. Sam watched that silent communication with a warmed heart. There was something deeply touching in the way his children, naturally, had opened their hearts to that stranger. Perhaps children instinctively knew what adults often forgot: that kindness knows no borders. During the following days, a delicate routine was established. Ayana taught Apache words through gestures. Sun was Shah, water was tu, thank you was ahehi. Sarah repeated each sound with the seriousness of a dedicated student, while Benjamin drew the meanings in the earth. In exchange, they taught her English. Water, said Sarah, pointing to the bowl. Thank you, responded Sam, when Ayana helped him with dressings for his hands, calloused by work. With each word exchanged, an invisible bridge strengthened between those apparently distant worlds. One afternoon, when the sun painted the sky in copper and gold tones, Ayana stood up for the first time since her arrival. Walking to the window, she contemplated the vastness of the desert that stretched beyond the small property. Sam approached, respecting the distance, and for a moment they simply shared the silence, watching how shadows danced over the earth. It was then that Ayana realized something extraordinary. For the first time in a long while, she felt at home. It didn't matter that the walls were strange or that the language was different. There was something in that home that spoke directly to her heart. But she knew that her tribe should be looking for her, and that staying there could bring consequences she couldn't yet foresee. The sound of horses' hooves arrived before the dust, a rhythmic cadence that made Ayana's heart race, and Sam's tighten with apprehension. It was the 5th day since her arrival, and she knew this moment would inevitably come. 20 Apache warriors emerged from the dancing heat of the desert, like mirages taking form, their bodies painted for war, reflecting the seriousness of the mission. Naiche, Ayana's father, rode at the front with the majestic posture of a born leader. His graying hair braided with beads and feathers fluttered in the wind, and in his eyes was the wisdom of one who had lived long winters and witnessed many seasons of pain. Beside him, Victorio, young, impetuous, with the burning gaze of one who still saw the world in absolutes, kept his hand close to his knife handle. Sam emerged from his cabin with open arms, palms turned upward in body language of peace that transcended cultures. Sarah and Benjamin remained near the door, their hearts beating like silent drums. Ayana, leaning against the window frame, breathed deeply the air charged with tension and possibilities. Naiche dismounted with the gracefulness of a man born in harmony with the earth. His eyes met his daughter's, and in that look there was relief, love, and a silent question. Ayana nodded almost imperceptibly. She was well, she was safe, she was transformed. The communication that followed was a delicate dance of gestures, expressions, and carefully chosen words. Ayana explained her rescue, described the care received, the unexpected kindness. Naiche listened with the patience of a wise judge, his eyes alternating between his daughter and the white man who had risked everything to save her. Victorio, however, seethed with impatience. In his burning youth, he saw betrayal where Naiche perceived opportunity. For him, Ayana should return immediately, before she became contaminated with the white man's customs. But when he expressed this opinion in Apache, Ayana responded with a firmness that surprised everyone, including herself. "There are different ways to see the same sky," she said, her words echoing with new wisdom. This man didn't see a wounded Apache, he saw only a person who needed help. Sam, although he didn't understand the words, felt the emotional weight of the discussion. When Ayana gestured in his direction, he approached slowly, offering Naiche the only thing he could, his word of honor. Placing his hand over his heart, he said simply, "Safe." The silence that followed was dense as rain before a storm. Finally, Naiche made a decision that would change the course of many lives. Ayana could remain until she recovered completely, but he established conditions. She would maintain her traditions, a warrior would remain nearby to ensure her safety, and she should return when called. Victorio protested, but the leader's word was final. As the warriors prepared to leave, leaving only a young man named Cochetta to watch from afar, Ayana felt the weight of responsibility she now carried. She had become a bridge between two worlds, and on her shoulders rested the future of many relationships yet to be born. When the dust settled and silence returned to the valley, Sam approached Ayana. Without words, he extended his hand. She took it briefly, and in that simple touch both felt the echo of a promise they didn't yet know how to keep. The stay had been agreed upon, but everyone knew this was only the first of many trials to come. Cochetta arrived 3 days after the warrior's departure, but not as a guard, as a bridge. Ayana's cousin and daughter of an Apache mother and Mexican father, she carried in her veins the heritage of 3 worlds, and on her tongue the ability to unite them. Her eyes were almond-shaped like Ayana's, but there was a different vivacity in them, shaped by years of navigating between cultures. When she dismounted from her small pinto horse, Cocheta brought with her more than words. She brought the possibility of true understanding. Sam received her with the same reserved courtesy he had offered Ayana, but it was relief that stood out most in his expression. Finally, there would be full communication. "She says you are a good man," translated Cocheta after a long conversation with Ayana in Apache, "that your children have hearts clean as mountain water, that this house has how do you say, peaceful soul." Sam felt something warm in his chest. Sarah and Benjamin, who had observed Cocheta's arrival with growing curiosity, approached timidly. The young Apache Mexican woman had the gift of making everyone feel at ease, laughing easily and gesturing expressively while speaking. During the following weeks, the cabin transformed into a small language school. Cocheta taught Spanish to Sam and the children, while Ayana learned English with surprising speed. Mornings began with practical lessons. Buenos dias became good morning, which transformed into Apache expressions whose melodious sounds filled the house with new music. It was through Cocheta that Sam learned Ayana's true story. She was a medicine woman, a respected healer in her tribe, knowledgeable about the properties of desert plants and ancestral healing rituals. The wound that brought her there had happened during a peace meeting gone wrong, when nervous settlers opened fire against Apache emissaries. "She's not afraid of death," explained Cocheta one afternoon, while they watched Ayana gathering medicinal herbs in the small garden Sam cultivated. "But she's afraid that the worlds will never understand each other. She says the spirits brought her here for some reason." Sam watched Ayana move among the plants with the gracefulness of someone who knew the secrets of the earth. Her hands touched each leaf, as if whispering ancient secrets, and there was a serenity in her movements that calmed something deep in his soul. He began to understand that it hadn't been just a casual encounter. There was purpose in that moment, in that place, in those hearts that opened slowly. The nights became moments of precious exchanges. Ayana taught Apache songs that spoke of the union between sky and earth, while Sarah sang hymns she had learned from her mother. Benjamin showed his wood sculptures, and Ayana reciprocated by teaching him to work with clay, creating small vessels decorated with sacred symbols. It was on one of those nights, when the moon painted everything silver and the desert whispered its ancient stories, that Sam and Ayana found themselves alone for the first time since Cocheta's arrival. Sitting on the wooden porch, they shared a comfortable silence, watching the stars dance in the infinite sky. "Sky same everywhere," said Ayana. Her English words still carried the melodic accent of her people. "Stars no see. How do you say? Differenza." "Difference," corrected Sam gently, and she repeated the word as if savoring each sound. "Difference," she nodded. "Stars no see difference, only hearts see." In that moment, Sam understood he was falling in love, not just with the extraordinary woman that destiny had brought to his door, but with the possibility of a world where differences became bridges instead of walls. But he also knew that the love between them would be tested in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The smell of smoke arrived before the alarm, serpentining through the night like a poisonous snake. Sam awakened with the sharpened instinct of a man accustomed to the territory's dangers, but when he saw flames licking the stable through the window, he knew this was no accident. It was a message. Ayana and Cocheta jumped from their bunks almost simultaneously, their bodies reacting before their minds fully processed the danger. Sarah and Benjamin emerged from their rooms, with eyes wide with fear, and it was Ayana who embraced them first, whispering words of comfort in Apache while Sam ran to the stable. The flames danced high against the night sky, fed by dry straw and desert wind. Sam fought desperately to save the horses when a burning beam crashed down right where he would have been if Ayana hadn't pulled him back at the last second. Their eyes met for an instant, blue meeting black, and in that look was the mute understanding that his life now depended on her as much as hers had depended on him. Cocheta organized the children into an improvised bucket brigade, while Ayana used her knowledge of desert plants to create a mixture that would help contain the flames. They worked side by side until dawn, when finally the last embers were extinguished, leaving only ashes and the blackened skeleton of what had been the stable. It was the following morning that Reverend Thomas appeared, accompanied by 3 men from town. His face was red with indignation, and in his eyes was the fanaticism of one who believed himself to be the spokesman of divine will. Sam immediately recognized the source of the previous night's accident. "Mr. Garrett," said the Reverend with a solemn voice, "this situation has become unsustainable. The presence of these savages on your property is causing disturbance in the community. It's time for them to return to where they belong." Sam felt anger rise like bile in his throat, but before he could respond, Ayanna positioned herself between him and the visitors. There was a dignity in her posture that made even the Reverend hesitate, and when she spoke, her English words were clear and measured. "I belong where heart finds peace," she said, each word loaded with a conviction that echoed in the tense silence. "This man saved life. This family gave love. You bring fire. I bring healing. Who serves God better?" The question hung in the air like a sharp blade. The Reverend opened his mouth to respond, but something in Ayanna's serene presence left him momentarily speechless. She had responded not with anger, but with a wisdom that exposed the hypocrisy of his Christian mission. When the men finally left, grumbling veiled threats, Ayanna approached Sam, removing a small turquoise amulet from her neck, a piece that had belonged to her grandmother and carried the protection of 4 generations of Apache women. She gently placed it around his neck. "For protection," she said, her hands remaining on the amulet for a moment longer than necessary. "My grandmother's spirit watch over you now." Sam felt the weight of the gift, not just physical, but spiritual. He understood that Ayanna wasn't just offering protection, she was sharing her heritage, entrusting him with something sacred from her culture. With infinite care, he closed his hands over hers. "Then I'll wear it with honor," he promised, and saw tears form in her eyes. Cochetta watched the exchange with a wise smile. She had seen many romances in her travels between worlds, but few had the silent depth that was growing between those two. It was love built not on sudden passion, but on mutual respect, gratitude, and understanding that some encounters are gifts from ancestral spirits. That night, while they rebuilt what the fire had destroyed, Sam realized that the fire had served an unexpected purpose. The flames that were meant to separate them had only made it more evident that they were united by bonds stronger than fear and prejudice. But he knew that greater trials were still to come. The morning Sarah disappeared began like all others, with the aroma of coffee mixed with the perfume of desert flowers that Ayanna cultivated near the house. But when silence extended beyond normal, and the girl didn't appear for breakfast, a mortal cold settled in Sam's heart. Benjamin found only an Apache corn doll dropped near the stream, the same type that Ayanna had taught Sarah to make. But there was something sinister in that abandonment. The doll was positioned deliberately, like a message. Sam immediately understood this wasn't a child's prank or an accident. Ayanna examined the doll with trembling hands. Her experienced eyes read signs that others wouldn't see, specific footprints, the wind direction when the doll was placed, small branches broken intentionally. Victoria was behind this. She recognized his signature in every detail. "Él quiere me llevar de vuelta," she explained to Cochetta, who translated for Sam. "He thinks if he takes the girl, I'll have no choice but to return with him." Sam's desperation was palpable, but there was something more in his eyes, a controlled fury that Ayanna had never seen before. He was ready to face any danger to recover his daughter, and this determination touched her deeply. For the first time, she realized how far he would risk everything for family. "No," said Ayanna, her voice firm despite the fear. "I go, I bring her back. Victorio, listen to me." "Absolutely not," responded Sam immediately. "You're not going alone." The discussion that followed was intense, but brief. Ayanna explained that Victorio wouldn't hurt Sarah. He was using her as bargaining, not as a target. But if Sam appeared at the Apache camp, the situation could become something much more dangerous. Cochetta offered to accompany Ayanna, serving as neutral witness to the negotiation. Benjamin, who had remained silent during the discussion, approached Ayanna and held her hand. His eyes, so similar to his father's, shone with unshed tears. But there was trust there too. He believed she would bring Sarah back. The journey to Victorio's temporary camp was tense. Ayana and Cocheta rode in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The desert seemed infinite under the scorching sun, and the heat created mirages that danced on the horizon like mocking spirits. When they finally spotted the camp, Ayana felt her heart tighten. Sarah was sitting in shade, clearly frightened, but unharmed. Victorio had treated her with care. He wasn't cruel, just desperate to keep his worldview intact. The confrontation between Ayana and Victorio was fought in Apache, with words that carried the weight of ancestral traditions and future dreams. He argued that she was losing herself, abandoning her people for strangers. She responded that she was finding a new way to serve peace between peoples. "You cannot love a white man and remain Apache," declared Victorio with bitterness. "You are wrong," responded Ayana calmly. "I can love a good man and be more Apache than ever. Love doesn't diminish who we are, it expands us." The wisdom in her words echoed in the camp's silence. Other warriors who had gathered to witness the confrontation exchanged thoughtful looks. Ayana had articulated something many felt but couldn't express. That identity didn't need to be a prison. Sarah was returned without further argument, running into Ayana's arms as if she were her own mother. During the return journey, the girl remained close to Ayana, and when they finally spotted the cabin on the horizon, she whispered something that deeply touched the young Apache's heart. "I knew you would come get me. I knew you love us." When Sam saw Sarah running toward him safe and sound, he embraced both his daughter and Ayana in an embrace that spoke more than 1,000 words. In that moment, any doubt that might have remained about his feelings dissipated completely. They were a family now, united not just by circumstances but by choice and true love. The territorial governor's carriage arrived on an October morning when the desert had traded its golden tones for the reds and oranges of autumn. Samuel Whitman was a pragmatic man, sent by the federal government to assess growing tensions between settlers and natives in the territory. What he found at Sam Garrett's small property surprised him deeply. Instead of the conflict he expected to document, the governor discovered something extraordinary: a nascent community where Apache and whites worked side by side. Ayana had taught desert irrigation techniques to maximize the use of scarce water, while Sam had shared carpentry and agricultural knowledge that benefited everyone. Cocheta served as interpreter during the official visit, translating not just words, but intentions and dreams. The governor watched fascinated, while Sarah recited numbers in 3 languages, English, Spanish, and Apache, and Benjamin demonstrated claywork techniques he had learned from Ayana. "It's remarkable," commented the governor during dinner, savoring a stew that combined Mexican spices with Apache herbs and American ingredients. "How you've created here a model of coexistence that many would consider impossible." Ayana, who had become more fluent in English each day, responded with the natural eloquence that had always characterized her. "Impossible is word for people who know try. We try every day. Every day we choose understanding over fear." The governor was especially impressed with the informal educational system that had developed. Apache children from the region began frequenting the property to learn, as did some children of more open-minded settlers. Ayana taught traditional medicine and nature knowledge, while Sam offered mathematics and reading. During his 3-day stay, Whitman meticulously documented every aspect of that experimental community. He saw how conflicts were resolved through dialogue, how resources were shared fairly, how different cultures could enrich each other without losing their unique identities. On the night before his departure, the governor made a decision that would change everyone's destiny there. In an improvised ceremony in the cabin's yard, under the desert stars, he announced he was granting official protection to that emerging community. "In the name of the Arizona Territory," he declared solemnly, "I recognize this place as a zone of cultural experimentation under direct protection of the territorial government. You have official permission to continue your work of reconciliation." Sam felt profound relief flood his chest. Ayana, in turn, understood that this official recognition meant she would no longer be forced to choose between worlds. She could legitimately inhabit both. But it was the name the governor proposed for the community that sealed the moment in history: Agua Clara, in honor of the small arroyo where it all began, and as a symbol of the transparency and purity of intentions that guided those people. "Agua Clara will be a beacon," prophesied Whitman, "an example that this nation's future needn't be built on divisions, but can flourish from the union of its differences." That night, after the governor retired to rest, Sam and Ayana walked to the arroyo under moonlight. The water ran clear and constant, reflecting stars like liquid diamonds. There, where everything had begun with an act of compassion, they joined hands and made a silent promise. Agua Clara would be more than a place. It would be a legacy of hope for all future generations. The love between them had found not just acceptance, but greater purpose. They weren't just an intercultural couple, they were pioneers of a new world where love could, truly, conquer all. The ceremony took place on a spring morning, when the desert awakened in wildflowers that painted the landscape with impossible colors. Two traditions met under Arizona's infinite sky. Reverend Matthews, an open-minded cleric who had come to Agua Clara attracted by the community's reputation, represented the Christian faith while Naiche conducted ancestral Apache rituals. Ayana had woven her own wedding dress, a masterpiece that combined delicate laces brought by Mexican traders with traditional Apache embroidery in turquoise beads. Over her shoulders, she wore her grandmother's ceremonial cloak, while around her neck shone a gift from Sam, a worked silver necklace he had forged himself during weeks of secret work. Sam wore his best suit, but on his cuffs shone abalone buttons that Ayana had made especially for him, and on his lapel he wore a small eagle feather blessed by Naiche, symbol of courage and spiritual vision. The ceremony began at sunrise, according to Apache tradition. Naiche conducted purification rituals, blessing the couple with sacred smoke of sage and cedar. His words in Apache flowed like ancient music, speaking of nature's cycles, the complementarity between man and woman, the sacred responsibility of matrimony. When it was Reverend Matthews's turn, his words echoed with equal solemnity. Love knows no barriers of race or culture. Where there is true love, there is God himself. His words were translated by Cocheta, creating a sound bridge between traditions. Sarah and Benjamin served as ring-bearers, small silver bands that Sam had made, decorated with symbols representing both cultures. When Sam placed the ring on Ayana's finger, he whispered in Apache, "Shi ayoi anoshni," I love you. When she did the same, she responded in English, "Forever and always." The most touching moment came when Naiche and Sam exchanged gifts representing mutual acceptance. The Apache leader offered Sam a bow he had made himself, symbol of trust and responsibility for family protection. Sam, in turn, presented Naiche with a wooden table he had hand-carved, representing stability and hospitality. The celebration that followed was an unprecedented festival. Apache music mixed with Irish songs Sam knew from his childhood, while flavors of Mexican, Apache, and American cuisine combined in a gastronomic symphony that delighted all present. Cocheta had invited relatives from both sides, and what could have been a tense encounter transformed into a demonstration that shared humanity was stronger than cultural differences. Apache and American children played together, while adults discovered surprising common ground. Governor Whitman, who had returned especially to witness the wedding, made a speech that would be remembered for generations. Today we celebrate not just the union of two extraordinary people, but the birth of a new possibility for our nation. May Agua Clara be the first of many places where difference is seen as wealth, not as threat. As a wedding gift from the community, the Agua Clara School was officially inaugurated, a simple but solid construction where Ayana would teach traditional medicine and nature knowledge, while Sam would offer lessons in mathematics, reading, and practical skills. In the center of the school, in a place of honor, Ayana's ancestral amulet was hung, now a symbol not just of her heritage, but of the union between worlds that the school represented. When the moon rose over the celebration, Sam and Ayana retired to the house they would now officially share. At the doorway, they stopped to contemplate the community they had helped create. Families of different origins living in harmony, children learning from each other, dreams being woven together. "Our children will grow up in a better world," whispered Ayana, nestling in Sam's arms. "They'll grow up in the world we're creating," he responded, sealing the promise with a kiss that tasted of hope and eternity. The wedding wasn't just the beginning of their life together. It was the moment when Agua Clara definitively became more than a place. It became a symbol that love can truly change the world. 2 years had passed since the wedding, and Agua Clara had transformed into a prosperous small town that attracted visitors from across the territory. The community had grown organically, like desert wildflowers after rare rain, naturally, but with surprising strength. The sound that now echoed most frequently through the town was the laughter of children of all backgrounds playing together. Sarah, now 9 years old, had become a small cultural ambassador, fluent in 3 languages and capable of mediating childhood conflicts with the wisdom of one who had grown up seeing differences transform into bridges. Benjamin, at 11, had discovered a talent for music, combining Apache drums with Irish melodies that created a new form of artistic expression. But the Garrett-Ayana family's greatest joy was little Joseph, only 6 months old, whose almond-shaped eyes combined traits from both parents and whose existence was living proof that love transcends all borders. Ayana carried him in a traditional Apache cradleboard she had made herself, decorated with protective symbols and embroidery that told the story of their multicultural family. The main house had been expanded to accommodate the growing family, but always keeping doors open for visitors and those in need. Ayana had created a medicinal garden that was famous throughout the region, a harmonious combination of Apache healing plants, Mexican herbs, and American species she had learned to cultivate with Sam. Her reputation as a healer had spread far beyond Agua Clara. Settlers who once looked at her with suspicion now traveled days to consult the medicine woman of Agua Clara, especially after she saved 3 children from a fever epidemic using an innovative combination of traditional Apache medicine and Western techniques she had learned from the visiting doctor. The community school had become the beating heart of Agua Clara. Every morning, about 20 children of various ages gathered in the simple but cozy building for a type of education that was revolutionary for the time. The day began with each child greeting the others in at least 2 different languages, creating from early on a mentality of mutual respect. Ayana conducted earth wisdom classes, teaching children to identify medicinal plants, read weather signs in animal behavior, and understand the natural cycles that governed desert life. Sam offered practical mathematics through construction and agriculture projects, while Cocheta, who had decided to remain permanently in Agua Clara, taught geography and history through the lens of multiple cultures. What most impressed visitors was how conflicts were resolved in the community. Ayana had established a talking circle based on Apache traditions, where anyone could present their concerns and where solutions were found through consensus, not imposition. Sam contributed with his practical experience and sense of justice, creating a hybrid system that worked remarkably well. One afternoon, while watching Joseph take his first wobbling steps in the yard, surrounded by Sarah, Benjamin, and half a dozen other children encouraging him in 3 different languages, Ayana had a profound revelation. She understood that this child, her son, would grow up never questioning whether people of different cultures could love each other and work together. For Joseph, diversity wouldn't be something to overcome, but simply the natural reality of the world. "He'll never know a world where this is impossible," she said to Sam that night, while the 2 contemplated the stars from their house's yard. "And perhaps that's the greatest change of all," responded Sam, putting his arm around his wife's shoulders. "A generation that will grow up thinking normal what we consider extraordinary." In that moment, both realized they had done more than create a family or build a community. They had planted seeds of a new way of seeing the world, seeds their children would carry wherever they went. Agua Clara was no longer just an experiment. It was living proof that the future could be different from the past. The summer of 1874 arrived with a drought that cracked the earth like ancient scars, and with it came the fever that would test all the bonds Agua Clara had built. The disease arrived with traders from a caravan that stopped to rest, spreading silently through families before anyone realized the gravity of the situation. Sam was one of the first to fall ill, his skin burning with fever, while he deliriously suffered nightmares of loss and separation. Ayana didn't leave his side for even a moment, applying all the knowledge she possessed: cold compresses of willow leaves, echinacea teas, eucalyptus vapors she had learned to use with a Mexican doctor years before. Sarah and Benjamin, terrified at the possibility of losing their father as they had lost their mother, took turns beside the bed, reading to him in low voices and whispering words of encouragement. Little Joseph, still a baby, was kept away, but could feel the tension that permeated the house like a dark cloud. For 3 days and 3 nights, Sam floated between life and death. Ayana used all the techniques she knew, but it was when she combined an Apache healing ritual with a quinine-based remedy that she finally managed to break the fever. She sang ancestral healing songs while administering modern medicine, creating a symphony of traditions that saved the life of the man she loved. When Sam finally opened his eyes on the morning of the 4th day, his first words were, "Ayana." She was there, as she always had been, holding his hand and whispering words of love in Apache and English. In that moment, he understood deeply that his life had been saved not just by medicine, but by his wife's unbreakable love. But Sam's cure was just the beginning. The epidemic had spread through the community, and Ayana found herself responsible for caring for more than 20 sick people. She worked tirelessly, moving from house to house like an angel of mercy, carrying her bag of medicines and her deep knowledge of healing arts. Cocheta served as assistant, helping to prepare remedies and comfort terrified families. Sarah and Benjamin, now recovered from the scare with their father, helped by caring for younger children while adults fought the disease. The entire community mobilized in a demonstration of solidarity that deeply touched all hearts. The decisive moment came when Ayana was called to attend to John Morrison's family, one of the settlers most resistant to Apache presence in Agua Clara. His wife and 2 young children were gravely ill, and he had swallowed his pride to ask help from the medicine woman he had previously despised. Ayana worked for hours in the Morrison house, applying her healing techniques without hesitation or resentment. When she finally managed to stabilize the family, John Morrison fell to his knees before her, tears running down his face marked by time and prejudice. "Forgive me," he whispered. "Forgive my blindness. You saved my family when I didn't deserve your kindness." Ayana helped him stand, her eyes full of compassion. "No forgiveness needed," she said gently. "We all make mistakes when fear lives in heart. Love makes us see clear." That was the definitive turning point in the community's perception of Ayana. From tolerated healer, she became the maternal figure everyone sought in moments of crisis. Her wisdom, combined with her tireless generosity, definitively established her as one of Agua Clara's spiritual leaders. When the epidemic finally passed, leaving the community traumatized but more united than ever, a gratitude ceremony was organized. Ayana was formally recognized as official healer of Agua Clara, a title she accepted with humility but also with pride. That night, while the family gathered again around the dinner table, Sam still weak but recovered, the children laughing joyfully, Joseph babbling in her arms, Ayana understood she had found her true purpose. She wasn't just a woman who had married a man from another culture. She was a living bridge between worlds, a healer not just of bodies but of social divisions. The epidemic had been a trial by fire, and Agua Clara had emerged stronger, more united, and more convinced that love and compassion could overcome any adversity. 15 years had passed since that first encounter at the Arroyo, and the autumn of 1886 painted Agua Clara with golden colors that reflected the community's maturity and prosperity. Sam, now with graying hair but eyes still bright with vitality, watched his granddaughter play in the yard where so many stories had begun. Catherine Kate Morrison, granddaughter of Ayana and Sam through Sarah, who had married John Morrison's eldest son in a ceremony that symbolized complete reconciliation between former adversaries, was 3 years old and carried in her brown eyes the curiosity characteristic of her Apache grandmother. She spoke naturally in English, Apache, and Spanish, switching languages as her childish imagination demanded. Ayana, now almost 40, had become an almost mythical figure in the region. Her reputation as a healer extended for hundreds of miles, but it was her wisdom as a conflict mediator that made her truly special. Governors and tribal leaders sought her counsel to resolve territorial and cultural disputes. The Agua Clara School had expanded to a complex of 3 buildings, accommodating more than 60 students of various ages. Sarah, now 22, had become the school's director, implementing educational methods that were studied in Eastern universities. She had inherited Ayana's patience and Sam's practical determination, creating a learning environment that was both rigorous and caring. Benjamin, at 24, had become a respected craftsman, creating furniture and musical instruments that combined American, Apache, and Mexican techniques. His pieces were sought by collectors throughout the territory, but he preferred making useful objects for his community. His workshop had become a meeting point for young apprentices of all cultures. Joseph, now 15, was the embodiment of the dream his parents had nurtured. Tall like his father, with his mother's natural gracefulness, he moved between worlds with the ease of one who had never known barriers. Fluent in 4 languages and versed in both Apache traditions and Western knowledge, he had been elected by the community as their future leader. The main house had become a hospitality center known throughout the region. Travelers of all origins knew they would always find a warm meal and a safe place to rest in Agua Clara. Ayana maintained the tradition of never refusing help to those in need, and Sam unconditionally supported this open-door philosophy. A special tradition had developed over the years. Remembrance Day, celebrated annually on the anniversary of Sam and Ayana's encounter at the Arroyo. The entire community gathered to tell stories, share meals, and remember how that small town had been born from a simple act of compassion. During this celebration, children born in Agua Clara would hear for the first time the complete story of how their grandparents or parents had arrived there, fleeing conflicts, prejudices, or simply seeking a better life. It was a way to ensure future generations understood the value of what they had inherited. Ayana's ancestral amulet, now permanently hanging in the school as a community symbol, had become an object of almost religious veneration. Children touched it before important tests, couples sought its blessing before weddings, and families in crisis often spent moments of reflection before it. On a golden October afternoon, while watching Kate play with children of at least 6 different cultural origins, Ayana felt a deep peace flood her heart. The girl ran among Apache and Mexicans, Irish and Germans, treating everyone with the same loving naturalness. "She'll never need to choose between worlds," commented Sam, approaching Ayana and putting his arm around her waist in a display of affection that had become even more tender over the years. "For her, there's only one world," responded Ayana, nestling against her husband's chest. "The world where love always wins." In that moment, both understood they had achieved more than they had imagined possible. They had created not just an intercultural family, but a new form of society where differences were celebrated as wealth, not feared as threats. Agua Clara had become what it was always destined to be, not just a place on the map, but a state of mind, living proof that love can, literally, change the world. The winter of 1891 arrived with unusual gentleness, as if nature itself wanted to grant Ayana a final season of peace and beauty. At 55 years old, she had become the matriarch not just of her family, but of all Agua Clara, a woman whose presence brought instant comfort to afflicted hearts and whose wisdom was sought by people throughout the territory. Sam, now 60, had developed arthritis that made heavy work difficult, but his eyes still shone with the same love Ayana had seen that first day at the Arroyo. They spent long hours sitting on the porch he had expanded over the years, watching the community they had helped create prosper beyond their most ambitious dreams. Joseph, at 25, had gradually assumed many community responsibilities. His natural leadership and ability to mediate conflicts were as respected as his mother's, but he always sought Ayana's counsel before making important decisions. He was a born leader, but also a devoted son who understood the value of ancestral wisdom. Kate, now 8, had become the special joy of Ayana's life. The girl showed early signs of the same intuition for medicine that had characterized her grandmother, often appearing with plants she felt could help someone who was sick. Ayana had begun formally teaching her the healing arts, recognizing in her the next guardian of the family's medicinal traditions. The Agua Clara school had become a model studied by educators across the country. Delegations regularly visited to observe how different cultures could be integrated into a cohesive and effective curriculum. Sarah had published articles on intercultural educational methodology that were read in Eastern universities, bringing national recognition to their small desert community. Benjamin had married a young German woman named Greta, whose parents had come to Agua Clara seeking a new life after difficulties in Europe. The wedding had been celebrated in a ceremony combining German, Apache, and American traditions, once again creating the multicultural harmony that characterized all important community events. Sam and Ayana's house had become a living archive of Agua Clara's history. The walls displayed photographs of all families who had found home in the community, handicrafts representing at least 10 different cultures, and thank you letters from people whose lives had been touched by the Garrett Ayana family's hospitality. One particularly clear December morning, Ayana woke with a strange sensation, not of illness, but of completeness. It was as if an inner voice whispered that her mission on earth was coming to an end. She felt no fear or sadness, only deep gratitude for having been chosen to live a life so rich in love and purpose. During the following weeks, she spent special time with each family member, sharing stories she hadn't yet told, transmitting final knowledge about medicine and spirituality, and mainly, ensuring everyone understood the value of what they had built together. For Kate, she reserved the most precious gift, the ancestral amulet that for so many years had protected first her, then the school, and now would return to a new generation of family women. When she placed the turquoise necklace around the girl's neck, her words were prophetic. This amulet carries the protection of 7 generations of strong women. Now it passes to you, to protect the next 7 generations. Always remember, we are guardians not just of our family, but of all possibility of peace between peoples. Kate touched the amulet with reverence, instinctively understanding she was receiving more than jewelry. She was inheriting a sacred responsibility. On Christmas Eve 1891, Agua Clara organized a special celebration in Ayana's honor. It wasn't a farewell, she was still relatively healthy, but recognition of the fundamental role she had played in creating that unique community. People traveled hundreds of miles to participate in the tribute. The current governor sent an official proclamation recognizing Ayana as Ambassador of Peace for the Arizona Territory. Apache leaders made long journeys to honor the woman who had become a bridge between worlds, but it was Joseph's speech that most touched everyone's hearts. My mother taught me that we are all children of the same earth, bathed by the same rain, warmed by the same sun. She showed that love knows no borders of color, language, or tradition. In Agua Clara, she planted seeds of hope that will continue growing far beyond our lives. We are all better for having known Ayana, and the world is better because she existed. That night, while the community celebrated around a great bonfire, Ayana felt enveloped by deep peace. She had fulfilled her purpose on earth. She had loved completely, built lasting bridges between cultures, and created a legacy that would endure for generations. The circle that had begun with a simple act of compassion at the arroyo was completing itself, but its influence would continue expanding like waves in water, touching lives not yet born and creating possibilities not yet dreamed. The spring of 1892 arrived with an emotional intensity that no one in Agua Clara could have predicted. It was Kate, now 9 and bearer of the ancestral amulet, who first noticed something extraordinary was happening with her grandmother Ayana. The girl had inherited not just the turquoise necklace, but also the spiritual sensitivity that allowed reading invisible signs of the world. "Grandma is shining differently," Kate told Joseph on a sunny April morning. "She has starlight around her heart." Joseph, who had learned to take his niece's intuitive perceptions very seriously, observed Ayana more carefully in the following days. Indeed, there was a special luminosity in his mother, not the light of illness, but something deeper, as if she were preparing for a great transition. It was Concheta, now over 50 and still Ayana's closest confidant, who finally brought to light what all the community's most sensitive women already intuited. During a traditional medicine ceremony to bless spring harvests, she had a vision that would change everything. "The ancestral spirits are preparing to receive our sister," Concheta told Sam in a private conversation. "But not yet. First, there's something that needs to be revealed, something that will give our community strength to continue without her." Sam felt his heart tighten. He had noticed subtle signs. The way Ayana sometimes looked at the horizon, as if seeing things others couldn't see, how her prayer moments had become longer and more intense, how she had begun organizing her personal belongings with almost ceremonial care. The revelation came during that year's Remembrance Day, when all of Agua Clara gathered to celebrate the 21st anniversary of Sam and Ayana's encounter at the arroyo. More than 200 people now called that town home, representing at least 15 different nationalities and cultures. Ayana asked to speak as she always did on this date, but this time her words carried a different weight. She stood in the center of the circle, illuminated by sacred fire with the ancestral amulet, now worn by Kate, shining softly in the firelight. "My dear children of all cultures," she began, her voice echoing with spiritual authority. 21 years ago, the spirits guided me to that arroyo, not just to find healing for my wounded body, but to discover my true purpose in this life. She paused, her eyes traveling over the familiar faces surrounding her. Some she had helped birth, others she had healed from illnesses, all she had touched with unconditional love. Today, they revealed to me why I was chosen for this journey. Agua Clara isn't just a community, it's a fulfilled prophecy. For 7 generations, the women of my lineage guarded a sacred vision. A time would come when Earth's peoples would learn to live as one family, honoring their differences as mutual gifts. The silence that followed her words was deep as the desert itself. Sam felt tears running down his face, finally understanding the magnitude of what they had built together. "You are the first fruits of this prophecy," continued Ayana, her voice growing in intensity. "Each child born here, each marriage that unites different cultures, each conflict resolved with love instead of war, all of this are seeds of a new world being born." Kate approached her grandmother, gently touching her hand. In that moment, the girl understood she was being passed not just an amulet, but a mission that would extend throughout her life. "The amulet Kate now carries was touched by the hands of 7 visionary women," revealed Ayana. "Each planted seeds of peace in her time. Kate will be the 8th, and through her the vision will spread beyond what we can imagine." Joseph stood up, feeling the weight of responsibility falling on the entire family. He understood that his leadership in Agua Clara was just the beginning of something much larger. "I promise you," said Ayana, concluding her revelation, "that even when my body returns to the earth I have always loved, my spirit will remain here, guarding this community and guiding those who will continue spreading seeds of love throughout the world." That night, the Remembrance Day celebration transformed into a ceremony of commitment. Each family present made solemn vows to keep Ayana's vision alive, to continue expanding Agua Clara's ideals beyond its geographical borders. Sam, holding his wife's hand under the infinite desert stars, whispered, "You always knew, didn't you?" "Spirits whisper to those willing to listen," she responded, nestling in his arms. "I was just a good listener." The revelation had transformed Agua Clara from experimental community to spiritual movement, and everyone present understood they were part of something much larger than themselves. They were pioneers of a new era of humanity. The autumn of 1892 painted Agua Clara with golden tones that seemed to bless each leaf, each house, each heart that beat in that blessed community. Ayana had spent recent months meticulously organizing the legacy she would leave for the world, not in material goods but in traditions, knowledge, and mainly in the unshakable certainty that love always finds a way to win. In October, when the first leaves began to dance in the wind, Ayana gathered the entire family for a final ceremony. It wasn't a sad farewell, but a celebration of transition, like seasons that naturally succeed each other, each carrying unique gifts to the next. Kate, now fully conscious of her responsibility as bearer of the ancestral amulet, had become a small healer under Ayana's guidance. Her small hands already showed the same sensitivity when touching medicinal plants, and her eyes carried the ancient wisdom that characterized all women of her lineage. "Always remember," said Ayana to her granddaughter, while adjusting the amulet around her neck for the last time, "that we are guardians of dreams. Each person you help heal, each heart you help unite, each bridge you build between different cultures, all of this is part of the great prophecy we are fulfilling." Joseph, now officially recognized as Agua Clara's leader, had expanded the community's influence through partnerships with other territory towns. His dream was to create a network of intercultural communities extending throughout the American West, and Ayana knew he had the vision and determination necessary to achieve this goal. Sarah had meticulously documented all educational methods developed in Agua Clara, creating a manual that would be used by other communities interested in implementing intercultural education. Her work would ensure that the school's innovative approach wouldn't die with her generation. Benjamin, through his furniture and musical instruments, had created a unique art form, combining techniques from multiple cultures. His pieces weren't just functional objects, but tangible symbols that beauty arises when different traditions unite in harmony. Sam, who had aged gracefully beside Ayana, remained as the family's emotional heart. His capacity for unconditional love, to see beyond superficial differences to find shared humanity, had been the fertile soil where all of Ayana's dreams could flourish. On the morning of November 25, 1892, exactly 21 years and 6 months after that first encounter at the arroyo, Ayana awakened with a spiritual clarity that filled her with deep peace. The sky was particularly blue, distant mountains seemed closer, and there was a perfume of wildflowers in the air that transported her to the sweetest memories of her life. She spent the entire day visiting every corner of Agua Clara, silently blessing each family, each child, each dream still germinating. When she reached the arroyo where everything began, she knelt at the crystal-clear water's edge and whispered a prayer of gratitude that echoed like music through the valley. That night, gathered with the entire family around the table Sam had made with his own hands decades before, Ayana shared her last words as the family's active matriarch. "The love we built here is eternal. Each time someone chooses understanding over fear, each time different cultures unite in mutual respect, each time a child grows without prejudices because they were taught to see beauty in difference. In that moment, our story begins again. We are just the first verses of a song that will be sung by many generations." Kate held her small hand over her grandmother's, feeling through touch the passage of sacred responsibility. In that moment, she understood she would carry forever not just an amulet, but a mission of peace that transcended her own life. When the full moon rose over Agua Clara that night, bathing the entire community in silver light, Ayana closed her eyes for the last time as earthly leader of the town. But her presence remained, in the traditions she had established, in the hearts she had touched, in the lives she had changed, and mainly in the unshakable certainty that true love never dies. Sam, holding her hand until the last breath, whispered, "Thank you for teaching me that some encounters are gifts from heaven." Agua Clara continued prospering, spreading its ideals to other communities, other regions, other generations. Kate grew to become a legendary healer. Joseph led the establishment of a network of intercultural towns throughout the West, and each family member carried forward Ayana's vision. Years later, when visitors asked about Agua Clara's secrets, the answer was always simple. An Apache woman and an American widower chose to see beyond differences to find love, and from that love was born proof that humanity can live in harmony when it chooses understanding over fear. The ancestral amulet remains in the family today, passed from generation to generation, carrying with it the eternal promise that love always finds a way to win, and that each new day offers the opportunity to begin again, building a better world. Some loves transcend time, some stories echo through eternity, and some souls are born to teach the world that difference is a gift, not a barrier.